85 Broad Street, that's the home of Goldman Sachs and Lloyd Blankfein. They had a perfect quarter in the fiscal year 2010. Wall Street, here I come. New York City, look out. Yeah, I'm here on Wall Street trying to find some answers to what has taken place the last 3 years since the financial meltdown in 2008. So I'm on Main Street, even though it's called Wall Street, and here's a fence. And then there's Wall Street over there, and I can't seem to get in. There's a fence with the big banks over there, and the average Joe right here on Wall Street, and we can't get the answers. There's going to be new rules on Wall Street. Who's going to be the gatekeeper and the referee when these new rules come out? What would George Washington say today if he knew about Wall Street and all the dirty games they play with the naked short selling since the elimination of the uptick rule in July of 2007 that caused the financial crisis in the United States and also globally?
Depression economics, the kinds of problems that characterized much of the world economy in the 1930s but have not been seen since, has staged a stunning comeback. 15 years ago, hardly anybody thought that modern nations would be forced to endure bone-crushing recessions for fear of currency speculators, and that major advanced nations would find themselves persistently unable to generate enough spending to keep their workers and factories employed.
Looks like deja vu all over again from the crash of 1929 to 2008 when Wall Street started playing their dirty games again.
We have faced the worst recession since the Great Depression. The primary cause was a breakdown in our financial system. Of a failure of responsibility from certain corners of Wall Street to the halls of power in Washington.
The average Joe investor doesn't stand a chance, and it appears the European Union and Germany and the rest of the country and the world is starting to understand what took place the past 3 years on Wall Street and their dirty games. The uptick rule, it was implemented after the Great Depression of 1929. Down the road years later in 1938 they put in what they called the uptick rule, which was to try to prevent a stock market crash. On July 6, 2007 they abolished this uptick rule, and then a frenzy of corruption took place on Wall Street, which led to the stock market crash in 2008. Basically, part of what I want to try to tell in this documentary is how Wall Street shifted their greed game from early 2007, where they bundled all the shitty loans and sent them over to the European countries, and went into a whole brand new scandal of the stock market scandal, which is now starting to unfold. My name is Richard, and I'm here. We're trying to produce a movie to explain what took place the last few years on Wall Street and with me personally on how I got involved. Basically, I took an early retirement from the Air Force and Post Office, combined 26 years of service. I retired on October 31st, 2008. Yeah, so I made an investment December 10th, 2008, 2 days after Bernie Madoff got arrested. Go figure. But then 9 days later, I discovered that the news, the real truth about my investment in Sirius satellite radio was not being told by the news media. Writing on the internet and blogging. I became known as the referee on the internet, and I sent 50 letters to the media and not one replied back to me for 30 days. So that put us into January 2009. I got active, and with today's technology of Twitter and Facebook and blogging on the internet, my voice was heard. July 2007, it hasn't been a pretty picture for the American people, as they lost 20 to 60% of their life savings through their 401ks because of these greedy hedge fund managers shorting the stock. I had got contacted by Sandra Moore, and she interviewed me and ended up picking me as a narrator for her movie called Stock Shock. My name is Richard. I'm a retired government worker and a lifetime subscriber to Sirius XM satellite radio. I'm also an investor. I bought this stock to hopefully help out with my daughter's college tuition. The short selling of the American dream, which is about naked short selling.
By the time you count credit default swaps, counterfeiting of securities, counterfeiting of American treasuries, and counterfeiting of other corporate bonds that are transmitted electronically, but in reality, a lot of them don't exist. It's probably the biggest theft in America's history.
They came in and raided the American banking system with the intent of bankrupting Citibank, JP Morgan Chase, you name it.
Stock was made by Sandra Moore, and it came out on June 10th, 2009, on my birthday. And I got contacted by the President of the United States office on August 17, 2009. I got contacted by 4 separate Security Exchange Commissions. I met with William Galvin's office on September 10th and met the head lawyer that's investigating Goldman Sachs. 85 Broad Street, that's the home of Goldman Sachs and Lloyd Blankfein. They had a perfect quarter in the fiscal year 2010, first quarter, January, February, March. They made over $25 million on every trading day, and 35 of 63 trading days in the first quarter, they made over $100 million using secret codes and software to manipulate the stock prices. I want to explain there's some connections with Goldman Sachs, so I'd like to get some facts out. It's a fact that Goldman Sachs hired a math whiz, computer programmer named Sergey Lenikov in May of 2007, just 2 months before they abolished the uptick rule. July 3rd, 2009, the FBI arrested the Goldman Sachs computer programmer, and he was downloading over 1,000 secret codes and files and sent it to a German website. The news media did not cover this arrest, but about 15 seconds. What happened is he sent them to a German website. Fast forward to May 18, 2010, and Germany overnight announced a ban on naked short selling. So what is the relationship? Did the German government find out what the Goldman Sachs secret codes and secret software and the files that were sent to the website, did they find out what they were and cause them to react so quickly? Goldman Sachs board of directors secretly met with Hank Paulson in Russia in June of 2008, 3 months before the financial meltdown on Wall Street. In September, I had met with the investigators that were out of Boston that were investigating Goldman Sachs. And I met with the head lawyers, and within a month there was an arrest involving the galleon trading scandal where 5 people were arrested. And then a month later, around October 31st, the FBI arrested 14 more people tied to the galleon trading scandal. But what I want to bring out now is on April 15th, a Goldman Sachs board of directors, last name was Gupta, was indicted and connected to the galleon trading scandal. The following day, April 16th, the government brought civil fraud charges against Goldman Sachs.
Announcing that Goldman Sachs has agreed to pay more than $500 million to settle charges that had misled investors in connection with the Abacus CDO transaction. The more than $500 million is the largest penalty assessed against a Wall Street firm or an investment bank,
which is peanuts to them.
That Goldman publicly acknowledge the fundamental basis of our complaint, and that is what they did. They acknowledge that the marketing materials for the Abacus CDO transaction contained incomplete information, and that they failed to disclose the role of Paulson and Company in the selection of the portfolio in the CDO, and failed to disclose that Paulson's economic interests were adverse to the CDO investors.
As Rod said, this record-setting penalty reflects the egregiousness of Goldman's misconduct and should serve as a powerful deterrent to others on Wall Street and elsewhere who consider engaging in deceptive conduct.
Take a look. Goldman Sachs just on July 6th, Brian Kelly, said that Deutsche Bank alone would have to raise 14 billion euros in capital. Here we are sitting today, 3.5 billion euro shortfall across 91 banks. What's your take on the stress test?
Well, the whole stress test and all the stress is about sovereign debt. So if you do not stress sovereign debt, or the majority of sovereign debt, then there is no stress at all. So that's why I think you come up with the $3.5 billion. I think if you actually do look at how much they actually hold, you're going to find that there's a little more stress out there.
And now the European Union is stepping forward. It was announced today that they're going to follow Germany's suit as far as naked short selling goes, probably in October of 2010. So is the word getting out what these secret codes and files were that were sent to that German website? Hopefully financial reform will straighten out these dirty tactics of the Wall Street banksters and criminals and the big banks and corporations that have been stealing the wealth, not only off the average Joe investors in the United States, but European countries, as Wall Street is not trusted anymore.
For years, our financial sector was governed by antiquated and poorly enforced rules that allowed some to game the system and take risks that endangered the entire economy. Even before the crisis hit, I went to Wall Street and I called for common sense reforms to protect consumers and our economy as a whole. This reform will help foster innovation, not hamper it. It is designed to make sure that everybody follows the same set of rules.
When financial reform takes place, who's going to enforce the rules on Wall Street so it's a fair game for Main Street and also corporate America? We need referees to make sure it's a fair game for all.
When the gates are all down and the signals are flashing and the whistles are screaming in vain, and you stay on the tracks avoiding the facts, you can't blame the wreck on the train. Wasn't the role of the rating agencies, though, to be referees in a game that got out of control? You told our staff that, well, gee, if they had not done the ratings, they would have been howled at by Congress. But don't we expect referees to make the call,
yeah, we
even if they're going to get booed?
Yeah, and they made the wrong call. I mean, they basically believed, as most of the American public did, and you couldn't have had this size bubble without overwhelming. And the Cassandras were there, but who was going to listen to John Paulson in 2005 or 2006 or Michael Burry? I mean, it didn't mean anything.
Who are they going to be? Is it going to be the SEC? Because I'm willing to volunteer myself as a sports official to enforce the rules on Wall Street so that it is a fair game played for all.
The first great financial crisis of the 21st century had begun. I'm tempted to say that the crisis is like nothing we've ever seen before, but it might be more accurate to say that it's like everything we've seen before, all at once. A bursting real estate bubble comparable to what happened in Japan at the end of the 1980s. A wave of bank runs comparable to those of the early 1930s, albeit mainly involving the shadow banking system rather than conventional banks. A liquidity trap in the United States, again reminiscent of Japan. And most recently, a disruption of international capital flows and a wave of currency crises, all too reminiscent of what happened to Asia in the late 1990s.
The real financial freedom will not be found on Wall Street. All these people around here are seeking the truth about what has taken place on Wall Street the past 3 years and how they lost all their money.
Who have struggled during the financial crisis and who the president says, had there been this new financial regulation, would have been protected by the new Consumer Protection Agency.
I believe not only that we're living in a new era of depression economics, but also that John Maynard Keynes, the economist who made sense of the Great Depression, is now more relevant than ever. Keynes concluded his masterwork, The General Theory of Employment, Interest, and Money, with a famous disquisition on the importance of economic ideas. Soon or late, it is ideas, not vested interests, which are dangerous for good or evil. We can argue about whether that's always true, but in times like these, it definitely is. The quintessential economic sentence is supposed to be, there is no free lunch. It says that there are limited resources, that to have more of one thing, you must accept less of another, that there is no gain without pain. Depression economics, however, is the study of situations where there is a free lunch, if we can only figure out how to get our hands on it, because there are unemployed resources that could be put to work. The true scarcity in Keynes's world, and ours, was therefore not of resources or even of virtue, but of understanding.
We have a big debt crisis around the world. We have to solve it. It's going to be a very long period of time before that resolves itself fully. Maybe never. Maybe we have to continue to find ways to solve that. But that doesn't mean you can't make money. You can make money. Volatility gives you the opportunity to make money. You asked about Highbridge. Highbridge is our $20 billion hedge fund that we manage on behalf of clients. Every day they're making money based on moves in the market. You can make money by taking it and putting it into good companies with good value, and people will look back, and 2010 will end up being a year where they wish they had put money to work.
Sitting here in front of Fast Money, and it's pretty sad that this show does not tell the real truth to the American people about Wall Street and the manipulation of stock prices.
Wow. Okay. It's telling me here that what you're showing in this movie is some problems, you know, that's happening in that area because of the finances. It's also showing me here how many people in this community, the financial community, are very upset, and they are wounded and they are hurt, and actually they need to be healed and they need to be helped.
I'm in New York City seeking the truth about Wall Street, but I feel it's a global crisis, and the answer is with the world, not Wall Street.
That it is definitely global. The reason why I see it, because this is the world.
I signed into law a Wall Street reform bill that will protect consumers and our entire economy from the recklessness and irresponsibility that led to the worst recession in our lifetime. It's reform that will help put a stop to the abusive practices of mortgage lenders and credit card companies.
Money talks. That's a good one.
Wall Street reform is a key pillar of an overall economic plan we've put in place to dig ourselves out of this recession and build an economy for the long run.
Do you have something to say?
I have nothing.
It's a plan based on the Main Street values of hard work and responsibility.
For me, money is not important.
The truth is, it took nearly a decade of failed economic policies to create this mess, and it will take years to fully repair the damage. But I'm confident that we are finally headed in the right direction. We are moving forward.
There's going to be problems in all institutions. The economy is the first one that will be affected. Since the economy is the one that was affected first, because we already had the problem like a year ago already, we're still trying to recover from that.
Coordinating our global financial reform efforts to make sure a crisis like the one from which we're still recovering never happens again.
And even though there will be some economic improvement in the new year, 2011, there will always be bad things happening at the same time as well. And you have to realize that those bad things, in and of it, by themselves, yes, they look horrible. But when you realize why it's happening, it's because the world needs to be better. You need to continue it. And it's telling me here the reason why you need to continue it. Because even though you're focused only on this area of Wall Street, it really is connected to the whole world. The whole purpose for this disruption is so that people will eventually find their answers from inside. So that people can really see that there's true value in all of us, no matter what your economic status is. Okay, these are all spiritual things that need to come about. People need to evolve. So we're having difficulties in the world so that we eventually will come to the conclusion that it's not the finances that it's important, it's the people that are important. The real help that they need, which is probably in your film, is spiritual help.
I know that in times of great challenge and difficulty, we don't fear the future. We shape the future. We harness the skills and ingenuity of the most dynamic country on earth to reach a better day. We do it with optimism, and we do it with confidence. That's the spirit we need right now. And that's the future I know we can build together.
So showing me that the President of the United States will be president again. Telling me here that as long as he remains the president, when the first 4 years are finished, he needs to be president for another 4 more years, because that is what will help Wall Street.
back to school to try to get a college education. I'm 3 classes away from graduating from Southern New Hampshire University. That'll probably be one of my proudest moments, to get a 4-year college degree. Got down here on the Gulf of Mexico, and they finally put a stop to the oil leak 2 days ago, thank God. But this is the beauty of a lifestyle I want. And hopefully when the ban on naked short selling finalizes, I'll be able to share some of the wealth with family and friends so they can live a nice life themselves after. And I'm involved right in the middle of all of it. For the past 19 months, I've been stressed out trying to get this story told. I ended up with gray hairs where it got so bad I had to go dye my hair the other day. I don't like it, but it's better than being gray.
What to do? Dealing with the emergency. What the world needs right now is a rescue operation. The global credit system is in a state of paralysis, and the global slump is building momentum as I write this. Reform of the weaknesses that made this crisis possible is essential, but it can wait a little while. First, we need to deal with the clear and present danger. To do this, policymakers around the world need to do 2 things: get credit flowing again and prop up spending. The first task is the harder of the 2, but it must be done, and soon.
I'm at the Trump building, but I can't seem to find Donald Trump nowhere on Wall Street. Where is he, Donald Trump? Donald Trump. Has anyone seen Donald Trump down here on Wall Street? And the playing field needs to be leveled so everybody has a chance.